This is the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast, hosted by David Charlton, and you're listening to this podcast to help you build your own mental toughness, or so that you can support other people or your clients better. Either way, you will learn more about developing this plastic personality trait that all but guarantees that you will perform better and lead a more prosperous life. It's the week of golf's second major championship, the US PGA, and as this episode goes live, we'll know who has set the pace in the first round, who's put some low numbers in there. And now, for those who are regular listeners of the podcast, you'll know that I am a big golf fan. I've played the game since I was 10 years old and currently play off a handicap of 2, though annoyingly, I've had an accident. Yeah, a daft accident. Messing around with the kids, a freak accident, which means as I record this introduction, I'm sitting in a moon boot, wondering when I'm going to get my next chance to play golf. It's likely to be possibly a couple of months. So yeah, I'm going to be jealous watching the PGA, seeing the pros out on the golf course, as well as hearing my mates banter, poor banter that is, about how they're getting on. Anyway, on with the podcast. So regardless of whether this is golf, football, table tennis, boxing, or if it's business, being a business owner or a sales professional, there's always a psychological element to it. And today, yes, we are going to concentrate on golf, but it does overlap into other fields. So I'm going to be speaking today to a well-respected PGA golf professional, Vallely, and we chat about mental toughness in a golf context. We also talk about commitment levels in an attempt to actually master the game, if that's possible, and how being overly committed can be a hindrance, as well as a whole lot more. Enjoy. So how do you define mental toughness for golfers?
Well, I think it comes in many forms, David. Becoming a really good golfer takes years. And the road's certainly not smooth. It's full of ups and downs. So by the very nature of the sport, it's very challenging. So it requires a person to be very persistent over a long period, and not to be put off by setbacks and kind of bumps in the road. I truly believe with the variables in golf, it's the toughest sport out there, but it's also the best game. It's a sport that exposes you. Unlike team sports where it's collective responsibility, I think it really exposes you, and it's quite humbling at times. So you've got to be mentally tough. And it comes in many forms, whether it's a beginner who just starts the game, finds it really tough and decides to persist and keeps coming back when others might have given up. And then they start improving and it was worth it in the end, and I think that's somebody who's mentally tough to a degree. But it's harder in this day and age because of people want things instantly. Instant gratification is the world we live in now. But golf, like learning a musical instrument, is a skill, and skill can't be just kind of magicked out of thin air. So I'm sure music teachers experience the same thing with people dropping out of their classes because they want to be able to play the guitar brilliantly straight away. But you've got to be patient and keep persisting. Whether that definition of mental toughness is somebody who's willing to go and put hours in on the practice ground, and keep going because they're in love with the game. That's going to be a certain type of person. And in terms of on the golf course, to me, mental toughness would be somebody who is in control of their thoughts, who never really gives in, and can keep their composure when things aren't really going to plan. Tiger would be the epitome of somebody who's very mentally tough. I don't know if he's ever walked off a golf course and not given it 100%, which is something that not many people can say. He will grind it out, and turn an 80 into a 72. And then off the golf course, Dave, it's something I wasn't great at myself, if I'm honest. Somebody who doesn't beat themselves up too badly after a tough day, and can get perspective quite quickly on things. That would be somebody who's mentally tough to me. Jordan Spieth would be the epitome of that in this day and age. I find him phenomenal. He's got he's just got a brilliant brain. You walk off the golf course after a tough day, emotions are running high, and they stick a microphone under his nose, and the guy comes out with just unbelievable things in perspective, which I just think, wow, where do you develop that from? It's a talent in itself. But the toughest competitors, no doubt, are the ones who don't beat themselves up too badly, and they're always going to get the most out of whatever game they've got on a given day. So I think the problem with golf is you're not going to have your A game that often, David. So you've got to be willing to accept that, and then be willing to grind it out and put a score together.
Yeah, no, I love all of those points. Let's dig into the one about commitment then. And naturally, like as you say, it's going to be a bumpy old road, isn't it? To get from A to B, there's going to be plenty of setbacks along the way. How do you help your students to get through that?
Well, I think it's interesting because, like what you said about golf being the toughest sport, David. This is why you do see a dropout in golf sometimes, because people just struggle to handle those ups and downs. People go to cycling. What do you get in cycling? Well, you get from A to B most days, and you feel like you've achieved something. It doesn't leave you with a sour taste in your mouth, which golf can often leave you feeling very frustrated. So people decide to check out and go and do a sport that's going to make them feel better. And that's why golf's the ultimate sport if you can persist with it. And I admire anybody who is willing to put themselves out there and perform. But just coming to answer your question about the levels of commitment that are needed to master golf, I'm not sure you ever really master it, but there's always something you can improve on. But the best players, it really becomes an obsession. When I'm selecting squads with my England regional stuff, we will look beyond just what they're doing with a golf swing. We're looking for them internal qualities, a deep love of the game, and that inner drive, which is something you don't see as often, where somebody's absolutely driven. And I think the best players will fall in love with the process of improvement. They're quite happy just messing around on the short game area for hours on end, totally content, fascinated with kind of the control in the golf ball. I suppose that's the ultimate mastery mindset. And to those players, it's not a sacrifice. It's just something they love doing, and there's no place they'd rather be, I suppose. And that's the difference. That's the commitment for the people who get to that highest level. They're just on a mission, as we would call it. So with all the players I work with, especially the younger players, I'm always trying to light that fire in the younger players, and so they're off and running, and their home environment's going to have a lot to do with that. Almost behind every up and coming young player, there's normally going to be a parent who's supporting them massively and encouraging them and pushing them and giving them the opportunity to pursue their kind of love of the game, sort of, and then nowadays, so environment's everything, there can be some luck involved in that environment. You might not live near a golf course and things like this, but people are now manipulating their environment so they can make sure their children have got that opportunity to develop. It's sort of personally, Dave, I was brought up opposite a golf course, but none of my family played, which was quite unusual. Well, my uncle did. My uncle played, but he lived in Jersey. But I was quite competitive. But if I hadn't been brought up 50 yards across the road from a golf club, I probably would have never played golf. So it was a little bit of luck involved in that, I think also from a commitment point of view, golf will attract a certain type of person, especially for people who want to get to that highest level. You've got to be fairly happy spending some time on your own, and willing to go and practice a lot, and there's a huge correlation between the most successful players that I've worked with and hard work. I've almost never had to ask them to do it. They've just done it because they love the process, you know. And I, you know, with my regional squad, we they send me a weekly plan, and you know, without question, the ones who go on to achieve the most are the hardest workers. You know, I see them going above and beyond what is needed, you know, which is so the results aren't a fluke, really, David. It's behind it all is a lot of hard work, and just like I said, they're in love with the process of improvement.
You've half answered one of my questions now. It was like how you go on to help that committed person. You've mentioned the planning bit there. I love that because often what I see is the person who I end up working with might be the person who's like really highly committed and driven and all that, but they ain't got a plan, and they're all over the place to work on one thing one day, something else the next, and they don't know why they do it. And then the other person I'll work with is somebody again who's like really highly committed, but they're so committed, obsessed with like say the swing or different elements of golf that they forget actually about competing. So they might go like, you know, 2 or 3 weeks without playing, competing because their swing isn't in a perfect state. What advice do you give to those people?
You know, it is ultimately about results and performing. So, you know, with the players that I work with, we're going to look at where they are, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and target that. I'm not scared to be very honest with the people I work with. And if they come to me with a specific goal of I want to achieve X, then we'll look at what they currently do and how they do it. For example, they may, you know, short game may be a weakness, but they spend most of their time on the driving range hitting drivers, you know. So we're gonna change that. I think it's just really having a very clear vision of where they want to go and setting some goals. That's really important, and then and helping them pursue that.
No, I like that. Like you say, the goal setting is important, because often you might speak to a player and say, well, what are your goals for the season? And it's, I want to reduce my handicap by 2 shots, or something or win a club championship or a county championship or something like that. But yeah, there's a lot more to it, isn't there? You've got to go into a lot more depth.
Yeah, absolutely, David. I'm very honest with the players. You know, their goals. You know, is their work ethic on a par with their goals? And I'm unfortunately going to be the person that's going to tell them whether it is or it isn't. So somebody might say, yeah, I want to be world number 1, but I go to the range once a week and play 9 holes on a weekend. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen, you know. So you then try to paint the picture of what is required to achieve that at the top level, and then players are going to have to choose whether they are up for that level of commitment to it, you know. So it's and not everybody wants to run through a brick wall to achieve what they want. You know, if it was, it would be a very competitive world. You know, so those rare people who are willing to go to extreme lengths to improve and get what they want is quite rare, really. But I'm not judging them, because not everybody has to want that. You know, it's for me, it's me just painting the picture of what's required. This is the level of effort that you'll need to be putting in, and on a daily basis. And we're trying to light that touch paper where they're ignited and they love it. And see where they go from there. Some people you never light that touch paper with. Other people, they're off and running. And as parents, you know, we'll say to the parents, you know, your job really is to just provide that environment for them and the opportunity for them to do that. You know, someone like an Andy Murray, I'm sure his mom was quite pushy in the early days, but they'll have got to a point where Andy will have took over and he'll be driving the ship. And to a degree, his mom's job is nearly done then, because he wants it, he's chasing it, and he's going to hold himself accountable in terms of practice and things like that. And I think that's the ultimate place we're trying to push with young players is to get them to that point where it's their dream and they want it, and they're off and running. Because if it's the mom and dad's dream, then unfortunately it's probably going to fall foul further down the line.
Yeah, most definitely. So again, going back to the whole thing about difficulties and setbacks. So supposing I'm a player who's going through a bad run of form, I've lost some confidence there. How do you help them maintain some sort of perspective so they're not standing over a shot with 1,000 swing thoughts?
It's difficult, David. I mean, obviously it's very easy to get confused with this game. The margins of error are very small, and you don't need to be far out to feel miles out and lose confidence in a hurry. And then obviously what comes with that is, every person around you will have a piece of advice for you. Normally these people are giving you advice as to what they do, which doesn't necessarily apply to you, or they might say it looks a bit like this or a bit like that, but that's going to be based on their prejudice of what they feel a golf swing should look like. So, and then all of a sudden that doesn't work. So you go to YouTube. I get numerous lessons coming to me, and at the start of the lesson, they start with, I've been looking on YouTube. Now they're literally playing Russian roulette with their golf game. They're on the quick tip merry-go-round, and they can get lucky and stumble on a piece of advice which is perfect for them. But they could also get the opposite to what they need. So most people are looking for the solution, but they don't know the problem. So that low confidence state is come about through poor outcomes. They've hit enough bad shots, and then they've got no confidence, and then they're looking for an answer. So what I would do with them is help them understand what the issue is. Declutter their brain. And say, oh yeah, that information's absolutely hopeless for you. That's not helping you one little bit. So you understand what the miss is, what the pattern is, and there will be a pattern with every player out there, and then help them understand. And the thing with this game, you can go from very low confidence, Dave, and never wanting to play again, to within 2 or 3 golf balls, you can be smashing it and thinking, when's the next competition? That's how ironic the game is. We've all been there. You think, whoa, I found the middle of the bat again. Let's go. I'm ready to play. And that's to a degree my job. I will. My job is to pinpoint the exact thing in somebody's golf game that is holding them back or giving them those issues or poor outcomes, and then help them understand that. Help them put that into their game. And that's not total rebuilds at all, Dave. It's just most people are only one feeling or one angle away from hitting much better golf shots. And then once they've got that and they get that confidence, I think psychologically they go into a better place. But you've got to give them some evidence. You can't just get somebody to start thinking nicer thoughts or anything like that, Dave. We all know that kind of psychology exists out there, but it's normally going to be short-lived. So the psychologist and the swing coach need to be working hand in hand, or be the same person in some ways. Because one without the other isn't really going to work.
Yeah, golf is definitely a game of sort of feel, isn't it? And that really translates through to how someone feels and their confidence.
Yeah, Dave. I mean, it's. And people come for a golf lesson when they're struggling normally, and they walk through the door and they've got mental baggage of beliefs about what they think is correct for them. And every player's different, every swing's different. If you listen to me give a golf lesson, you'd go, wow, you just told that player the opposite to what the previous player you told. So, but if one's arrived with a hook and one's arrived with a slice, then they need opposite medication almost. They're going to get different information to get their ball flight back to neutral and restore their confidence. So one man's meat is another man's poison. And as far as my coaching is concerned, if you understand the mechanical side of things correctly, you should be able to pinpoint that very quickly with a player and bin all the stuff that they don't need to be thinking about, and say, this is what you need to be working on. And, I know in my coaching, if I don't have somebody hitting the golf ball better within 5 balls, then I've got to start to question whether the information I'm giving them is correct. That's how quick it should be. It's not 6 months. It's not 6 weeks. It should be instant. Then getting that player to own those habits that you maybe trying to change is the next hurdle. Which is why we don't charge £2,000 for a golf lesson, because you need to see somebody again and again and kind of reaffirm the same things over and again. Because people's pattern doesn't just change overnight. But if every time you do that, they hit the ball better and they feel they've got more confidence, so they've got a predictable ball flight, then they're going to stand on that first tee, feeling more confident because they know what the ball's going to do before they hit it, which is really the best players the world over. The best golfers are the best predictors. They might not hit straight ball, they might hit a low slice, they might hit a high draw, but if they can do it repetitively, Dave, then they're going to be a good player. They can get around a golf course, and navigate their way around the golf course with that, because they know what the ball's going to do each time. And that's the goal with every single player that I see. I want them to be able to be able to hit it solidly and have a repetitive ball flight.
You've definitely given a good sort of back in there to any golfer who doesn't necessarily see a coach very often, and like you say, just reacts to it, because basically what you're saying is, you as a coach, you're helping them sort of develop self-awareness, aren't you, and know themselves, know that swing inside out. So yeah, they know that tendencies and they can go and put it right on the golf course if necessary.
It's all about awareness, Dave. The golfer comes through the door and they arrive with a certain condition. You might call that their old condition. They come in and they say, I'm not happy my ball hooks to the left all the time. And I'm going to give them a new condition, I suppose, and help them understand why that's happened, and so they can combat that, and it won't happen again. But they've got to understand. Most people are looking for the solution, like I said, but they don't know what the issue is. So you've got to know your own game and be very aware of what are my tendencies. And most golfers' tendencies will have been their tendencies for 20 years. But I it's quite sad that people play this game, the game they love, and they struggle on for years and years and years. They'll say Bill comes along for a lesson and Bill slices it, and Bill sliced it for 20 years. He's known as the chop slicer in the golf club. I mean, it doesn't have to be like that. You can change that very quickly and make a huge difference to that guy's game. So that is obviously going to be mechanical, but because he's chop sliced it, he's got lots of mental hang-ups because he's a short hitter and things like this, and so, you can change things very quickly with people.
This is a short advertisement introducing the sponsor for the show, Chimera Sport, who produce a range of sportswear and equipment to help enhance performance and recovery, reducing injury occurrences. And as someone who has had long-standing back issues, I've personally tested some of the garments and I've been more than happy with them. You'll also find that the infrared sportswear has been clinically tested too, so it's great for fitness enthusiasts who want to push harder, go further, and recover quicker. More details can be found on the product section of our website and in the show notes. Yeah, that's the thing about like my job and your job. We're not like the GP. We're not sort of scary people in that way that who's going to break some like terrible news to you. We are here to help basically move people forward, aren't we? So they're playing the game and that sport with a smile on their face.
Oh, Dave, it's a lot of fun as well. Helping people. I look. That's the buzz of my job. That's what I got into it for. I think most coaches, it's nearly a vocation. They happen to get paid as well to do it, but you love what you do, making a difference to people. So somebody comes along and just to see that look on their face when they hit a solid shot or they draw a ball for the first time and when they've been hitting a chop slice, and they go, wow, that is very rewarding, and that's why we do the job we do. And the same with yourself. I'm sure getting people into a better place mentally, and you see them happy and flourishing. That's hugely satisfying.
Massively. That's exactly why I do my job as well. So you've been an elite coach with the best young golfers in the North region for quite a while there now. How do you think age influences golfers? When you compare the younger golfers to the older ones?
Really interesting question. I think young golfers, they tend to have no fear, as they've not been beaten up as much by the game as compared to people who've maybe played for 30 years. And this is a good thing and a bad thing. It's good because they play with a freedom. They're normally carefree. There's no scar tissue there, and I think with young people as well, they're also very resilient. I look at some of the players I work with. They might have had a bad day on the golf course. It was 5 minutes after they walked off the golf course, they're chatting to their friends, laughing, and you think, wow, they just bounce back. It's forgotten very quickly, and it's on to the next game, because the sun's always going to come up the next day and you're going to have another opportunity. The downside of young golfers is they haven't really learned to play the game yet, or understand strategy, especially with regarding picking smart targets on the golf course. You see a lot, especially lads. There's a bit more ego involved with lads. They'll not be a flag they can't take on. But they'll learn the hard way. So this is why most golfers don't mature and become their best until they're maybe in their 30s almost, because it literally takes most people that long to leave the ego in the car park and learn proper strategy on the golf course. So you see a lot of young players making great golf swings, but just at really low percentage targets, which are never the play, and you've only got to look at Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods, and they were just masters of this, they knew their limits. They played to their strengths. That doesn't normally come until a player's older. If you can get a young player to have that kind of wisdom, then you've got a real player on your hands. I would say Jordan Spieth is like that. Has been like that over the years. He's got an old head on young shoulders. I heard a top amateur ask Tiger Woods a few years back, why are you the greatest? And his answer was, I make aggressive swings at conservative targets, and I'm really good at lag putting. So basically, he is playing golf to eliminate mistakes. So when you see him miss a target 15 foot left, a flag 15 foot left, the chances are he was aiming there, because he's trying to give himself opportunities. He's confident, pace putting, he can roll it up there and two putt most of the time, birdie the par fives and cut out the mistakes, and there you go. You've got unbelievable golf being played there. Do you know what I mean? But great golf isn't firing at every flag, and that's the thing you're trying to teach young players. That they've got to keep their composure and stick to a smart game plan, and that's the one thing you'll see with older players, that they have that experience. Then again, some people never learn it, to be honest. Some people never get to that point. But you kind of, you're learning through failure all the time. And my job is to try to speed up that process with the younger players. I think it's quite ironic that the young players are fit, flexible, strong, but their golfing mind hasn't developed, and then you get the older players whose brain is better through the benefit of experience, but their body's not working anymore. So it's kind of a tough school, really, because they had to have it all, and that's what we're after.
It's an interesting one, that, to say the least. There's a part of mental toughness is called learning orientation. So in a way, it's being able to sit back, reflect on who you are, where you want to get to. And yeah, loads of people whether they're young or older, just don't have that in them. They just keep carrying on, and like you say, just repeating mistakes time and time again.
Yeah, was it Einstein, the definition of insanity? He's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, So it's having somebody in their team who can highlight that to them and say, look, we keep making this mistake. Are we going to learn from that? Some people are very fast at learning. Some people, they need to make that mistake and go for that flag on the edge of the green near the water 20 times before the penny drops, and they go, maybe that's not a green light flag. I should be going at the middle of the green here, And I think that's, that's what I'm trying to do with the young players that we've had come through and got to a really high level at a young age, is speed up that process. Not only help them get the right information for their game, but also mentally to have strategies to deal with pressure, to think better, to have good self-talk, good body language, all these things, and then obviously speed up the strategic side of things, so they kind of know how to play the game very well at a younger age. And that's why getting on the golf course with players is important, because you see everything. You see their decision making, their target selection, and you know yourself, David, with the psychology work, that golf's an emotional game, and so the strategies that you may have in your plan can go out the window after a bad hole. You step on the next tee and it was never a driver off the tee, but you're out with a driver because you've just three-putted the last, and you go chasing it. And I think the ability to keep your composure and think clearly when your emotions are running high is a skill. And this is why you'll always have work as a golf psychologist, it's because you've got a lot of time to think out there. You're only hitting balls for 20 minutes or something, and you're thinking the rest of the time, so it's not really a reactionary sport. I think the gentleman you mentioned before we came on air, Gio Valianti, he said that one of the greatest things he learned from Jack Nicklaus was, Nicklaus said if he'd had a really bad hole, he'd play the next hole almost more conservatively to give himself a full hole to regain his composure. I mean, that is it's just genius, but nobody does it apart from Jack Nicklaus.
Stand on the next tee box and swing another 10 mile an hour faster and do it as hard as you possibly can.
It's just genius. I mean, just stay calm, but you're now getting into your personality type and things like that, and not everybody has that in them. I certainly didn't. I would be full of hell. I've just hit a par 5 and 2 and 3 putted, nothing more frustrating. And you're on the next tee, wanting to get that shot back. And then you start either taking the wrong club off the tee or firing at a flag. And that more often than not will compound the situation, and you'll make another bogey. And then you start to spiral into a darker place, and so on. So the golf is, there's a huge part that the mental side plays in it, and getting players into good habits at a young age is key.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And a lot of the things that you said there resonate with me, certainly my younger days.
So there you go, Dave. It's the benefit of wisdom. You become a little more chilled out and have better perspective, I think, as you get older. And you just learn. It's what it's all about.
No doubt about it. So, who is the biggest influence on your career then as a golf coach?
I think every person you meet is going to have an influence on you, pretty much, especially if you spend a long time with them, whether that's influencing your coaching or influencing who you are as a person. That's, so the people you surround yourself with are going to shape you as a person. In terms of my coaching career, a gentleman by the name of Jim Hardy has been probably the biggest influence on me. Jim's a Hall of Fame teacher in the US. He's a legend in the coaching world, and Jim's probably had the biggest impact on my career. There's no doubt. And then his colleagues with the Plain Truth, who the company that he he owns. Chris O'Connell, who's also his partner with The Plain Truth, and Andy Trainer. Those guys have had a massive influence on my understanding and ability to help people with golf. I'm in touch with them almost on a daily basis. Especially Andy Trainer in the last year of lockdown. I spend a lot of time with Andy, talking to him and helping me get better at what I do. So they've been, I'll never thank them enough for what they've done, and I suppose to give you a little bit of background into that, David, I'd probably been a coach I turned pro in 2000, and I was an avid studier of the game, and there was no real golf coach I'd never really looked into out there. I'd looked into everything, but there's so much information out there, that you go, well, who's right and who's wrong? Because some of the information is conflicting. And it wasn't until I discovered Jim Hardy that all of a sudden things started to make a lot more sense. Jim literally had all the answers. And he learned them through persistence and a lot of failure, I suppose, as well. So I thought, I read his book and I thought, I've got to meet this guy. And that started my quest back in about 2010. It's kind of snowballed from there, really. And as soon as I met him and Chris O'Connell, I knew straight away these guys were different. I went out to Germany and spent a few days with them, and their passion for the game was, it was way beyond. They weren't doing this for sort of financial reasons. They just loved the game, and they were fascinated by helping people improve, and I saw that straight away. And then they also could answer all the questions I had really about why does this happen, why does that happen, and that's been a huge influence. And then closer to home, I've worked with John Harrison at Matfin Hall for a lot of years, and John's just been a great friend and mentor to me over the years. He's just a top bloke. Anyone who knows him, it's great fun, and there's never been a day really where I don't look forward to going into work, because we have fun. We always enjoy working, so they'll be my biggest influences, but there's lots of others as well.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. So what are the three big takeaways for the listeners today from our conversation?
Ooh, summarise all that.
2 minutes left.
I think, golf's a tough sport. I would advise listeners to work hard at their mechanics, get the right information for them, as they'll have more fun and the game will be easier for them, but they've also got to work at their mind. Most golfers practice the physical and technical stuff, but they neglect the mental stuff. Simply because when I've asked them, they don't understand it, and they don't know where to look to get the help, I suppose. And also there's a little bit of stigma involved with people saying, "Oh, well, I don't feel I think very well, and I'm not in a good place mentally with my golf." So people are somewhat embarrassed a little bit to say it, but if the truth be known, David, we're all in our heads at times, and we're all battling the mental side of things in golf because it's such a challenging sport. So, I think understand your game, understand you as a person would be my advice, and you'll enjoy the game a lot more. Secondly, I would say, work your tail off. If you want to get good at golf, you need to put the time in. The quote now, the ladder to success can't be climbed with your hands in your pockets. So it's not just going to land in your lap. You've got to get the right information for you, and you've got to be willing to put the work in. And the combination of those two things are going to make a huge difference. Like I said, the people who really push on, they fall in love with that process of improvement, and they're always looking to get better every day, and even myself, who doesn't compete really anymore, I'm still chipping and putting every single day. I go in the garden in this lockdown, and I've got a tennis ball, and I'll hit it 100 times against a wall. I just love golf. I love kind of working at my own game and trying to control the ball better. So your success is going to be the sum of kind of small efforts repeated daily, I suppose. And then finally, just play with better players, more experienced players. I think for the younger players out there or people starting the game, never turn down an opportunity to play with somebody who's a good player. You'll learn lots about how they play the game and how they put a score together. And then, like I said earlier, work at your mind. That's really important in terms of your happiness as well.
The great points there. That last one, I see an awful lot where people are actually frightened to play with better players, to put themselves in that environment because I suppose it scares them, or they're jealous of different people.
Oh, David, no doubt. I mean, people are like, oh, they're a low handicap, I don't want to play with them. I might embarrass myself, and this obviously comes back to a huge issue in society that people are scared of failing. They don't want to look bad. I don't know what happens in people's lives, but somewhere along the way, we're not born with that fear of failure. But as a baby, you have no fear of failure. But then somewhere along the line, we convince ourselves that failure is a bad thing, when actually it's a thing that's going to help you learn the most, which is something I'm always pushing with the squads I work with, that don't be scared of failing, don't be scared to step up and try things and fail, because you'll be in that position on the edge of your comfort zone where you're going to learn the most. So as a young junior, I started caddying at 11-year-old for the best player at the club. So I had front row seats week in, week out at league matches when this player was playing another player. And wow, I can't put a price on what that would have taught me about how to play the game. We'd be in the middle of the 10th fairway and the wind's howling and they hit this little knockdown shot and I'm there wide-eyed 11-year-old saying, how did you do that? How did you hit that shot? And I wouldn't have got that insight if I'd stuck with my friends who are off 20-odd handicap. I'm not going to be getting that insight. I'm not going to be learning their strategy and being able to pick their brains. So don't ever pass up the opportunity to play with better players. I think it's really important.
And the other thing that you've thrown in there is the importance of asking questions as well. It's dead easy to, I suppose, to watch, but getting their insights is so important too.
Yes, the students I help the most are the ones who ask the most questions. If somebody comes and gives you very little feedback, it's always a little bit of a tougher session. You'll be the same, but the ones who ask questions, it opens up, sends you down kind of channels where you learn even more. You might not start off asking about something, but then before you know it, you've learned something else. So asking questions, and that was something, as a youngster, I was very, very inquisitive. I wanted to know why things were happening, which was probably how I was destined to be a coach, I suppose. Because a lot of top players, they don't understand the why; they're just good players, So I think that's really, really important, to ask those questions and be inquisitive all the time about why things are happening. And people are scared to do that sometimes, but most people out there who are good players, they'll only be too happy to try to help people and answer questions on things, and I love it when I get golfers coming to me, whether it's adults or juniors, who want to know more and ask questions, and we just have some brilliant sessions that way.
I'm pleased you've said that, and we've ended on that note, because I try to get that message out to people, like certainly younger people that I work with, that coaches are humans, and they like questions after all. But often, as a kid, you can put the coach on a pedestal, and you're frightened to ask. Nice way to finish. So whereabouts can the listeners get a hold of you, find you if they want to reach out to you?
I'm based at Matfin Hall in Northumberland, but I'm on Facebook, JJ Vallely, PGA Professional on Facebook, on Twitter, at Vallely, that's VALLELY JJ, and then on Instagram, JJ Vallely Golf. I'm not massive on social media. I do a little bit, but it's kind of a necessity these days. But I think it's kind of the scourge of society. But that's maybe for another podcast.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere, is it? It's here to stay. So I'll make sure I put them links on the show notes. So if anybody wants to get in touch to improve their game, they know where to get in touch with you.
Well, thanks for inviting me on, David. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. We go quite a few years back, so it's great to catch up with you, and it's been a pleasure speaking to your listeners.
Yeah, no, likewise, much appreciated. I enjoyed recording that episode. JJ talks a lot of sense, especially when we're talking about patience and persistence. It's so important to recognise that whatever sport or line of work that you're in, that they are going to be setbacks. It's not going to be rosy all of the time, and being able to work your way through those difficult periods, it's going to make you a better person, golfer or athlete, or whatever it is that you are, as long as you give yourself the opportunity to sit back, to be honest with yourself and learn from those experiences. Another thing to note is that quality support is essential during these periods. There's so much misinformation out there. So my advice is, if you're currently struggling, hook up with a quality coach, someone like JJ, and get some support. Don't fall into the trap of simply relying on YouTube or tips from magazines. They're just going to go on and confuse you, and they might work for 3 shots, and then you're back to square one. They're not person specific. They're not designed for you. And you're unique. We're all unique. We're all very, very different. So really consider that. And as the saying goes, if you keep doing the same things, you are going to get the same results. So don't fall into that trap that I've just mentioned there. Another thing is, if the psychological element of the game, the mental side, is causing you some problems, why not chat to myself or my team? We support a number of golfers around the world now, as far away as Australia, some are in the States, in California, and on the East Coast as well as UK golfers dotted around the country, the north, south of England and in Scotland. It's relatively easy now to work with golfers without meeting them face to face. Most people are quite used to video calls, in all honesty, after COVID, which has worked out in our favour as a business. So please reach out to me during this golf season at any point if you do feel you'd like to pick my brains. I'm quite happy just to have a chat if that is the case. Or if you do want support, then naturally I'd love to be able to help you so you can play with a smile on your face and try and get the most out of your talent. And to contact us, go to our website, the3ws.sport-excellence.co.uk, or feel free to send me a question or two through via email. My email address is info@sport-excellence.co.uk. Those details are in the show notes. And like I say, I am happy to talk golf or any sport for that matter. If you enjoyed this episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with David Charlton, do check out my website, sport-excellence.co.uk, and my online sports psychology resources. The Sport-Excellence website has essential resources for anyone looking to build their own mental toughness or the mental toughness of their athletes or teams, or if you want to achieve peak performance more often or optimal functioning. The Sport Excellence website has everything you need to keep moving forward and thrive. So go on, head over to sport-excellence.co.uk to find out more.